All right, this is Deuteronomy 14 in the MacArthur Study Bible. Let's begin. You are the children of the Lord your God. You shall not cut yourselves, nor shave the front of your head for the dead. For you are a holy people to the Lord your God, and the Lord has chosen you to be a people for himself, a special treasure above all the peoples who are on the face of the earth. And you shall not eat any detestable thing. These are the animals which you may eat: the ox, the sheep, the goat, the deer, the gazelle, the roe deer, the wild goat, the mountain goat, the antelope, and the mountain sheep. And you may eat every animal with cloven hooves, having the hoof split into two parts, and that chews the cud among the animals. Nevertheless, one of those that chew the cud or have cloven hooves you shall not eat, as such as these: the camel, the hare, the rock hyrax, and the rock hyrax. For they chew the cud, but do not have cloven hooves, and they are unclean for you. And also the swine is unclean for you, because it has cloven hooves, and yet it does not chew the cud. You shall not eat the flesh or touch their dead carcasses. Those you may eat of all that are in the waters. You may eat all that have fins and scales, and whatever does not have fins and scales you shall not eat. It is unclean for you. All the clean birds you may eat, but these you shall not eat: the eagle, the vulture, the buzzard, the red kite, the falcon, and the kite after their other kinds, every raven after its kind, the ostrich, the short-eared owl, the seagull, the hawk after their kinds, and the little owl, and the screech owl, the white owl, the jackdaw, the carrion vulture, the fisher owl, and the stork, the heron after its kind, and the hoopoe, however you say that, hoopoe, however you say that, and the bat. Also every creeping thing that flies is unclean for you. They shall not be eaten. You may eat all clean birds. You shall not eat anything that dies of itself. You may give it to the alien who is within your gates, that he may eat it, or you may sell it to a foreigner, for you are a holy people to the Lord your God. And you shall not boil a young goat in its mother's milk. And you shall truly tithe all the increase of your grain that the field produces year by year. And you shall eat before the Lord your God in the place where he chooses to make his name abide, the tithe of your grain and your new wine and your oil of the firstborn of your herds and of your flocks, that you may learn the fear of the Lord your God always. But if the journey is too long for you, so that you are not able to carry the tithe, or if the place where the Lord your God chooses to put his name is too far from you, when the Lord your God has blessed you, then you shall exchange it for money, and take the money into your hand, and go to the place which the Lord your God chooses. And you shall spend that money for whatever your heart desires, for oxen or sheep, for wine or similar drink, for whatever your heart desires. You shall eat there before the Lord your God, and you shall rejoice, you and your household. You shall not forsake the Levite who is within your gates, for he has no part nor inheritance with you. And at the end of every 3rd year you shall bring out the tithe of your produce of that year, and store it up within your gates. And the Levite, because he has no portion nor inheritance with you, and the stranger and the fatherless and the widow who are within your gates, may come and eat and be satisfied, that the Lord your God may bless you in all the work of your hand which you do. And may the Lord bless the reading of the word. And let's go through the chapter notes. Alright, so the first verse talks about how you cannot cut yourselves or shave the head, shall not shave the front of your head for the dead. Now these two practices, lacerating the body and shaving the head, they were associated with mourning customs of foreign religions. So basically, don't be adopting the pagan practices, really. Though the actions could in of themselves appear to be innocent, they were associated with the practices and the beliefs reprehensible to the Lord. Yeah, basically, God does not want his people being like the pagans. So, doing the sinful practices of pagans. And I guess even practices that might seem innocent, but I guess really could not lead to good things, could lead to idolatry. Alright, and 2, you are a holy people to the Lord your God. So he has chosen you to be a people for himself. Again comes the more important reminder, the most important reminder of their peculiar relation to God. You are a holy people to God. Over 250 times, Moses emphasized to Israel the Lord your God. Alright, and basically the final verses, you have these various laws here. Verses 3 through 21 are the summary of clean and unclean animals. And this is drawn from the list in Leviticus 11, 2 through 23. So these are the dietary laws. The ground for the allowances and prohibitions of the eating of certain animals was that Israel was to be holy to the Lord. And these special dietary laws were to separate them from socially mixing with pagan idolatrous people, to prevent them from being lured into idolatry. So that's the purpose of these dietary laws in the Old Testament, is to keep them from being mixed in with the pagans and thus going and turning to idolatry. But in the Gospels, in the book of Acts, especially when the gospel was being preached, the barriers between Jew and Gentile were broken, and thus the dietary laws would be restricted. I mean, in Acts 10, Peter sees this vision of animals on a tablecloth, and basically he's told to kill and eat. And Peter's like, I can't do that. It's unclean. Well, God determined what is clean and unclean. But basically what that vision was pointing to was the barriers between the Jews and the Gentiles were broken because of the gospel. And then Peter would go and meet with the Roman Cornelius, and he would get saved. So thus the barriers were broken. And besides, the prophet Isaiah said that the Gentiles were going to become part of the kingdom of God anyway. So it was even prophesied in the Old Testament. But these dietary laws were one of the barriers to separate those two, until the gospel would eventually bring all to salvation. And then you wouldn't need these various barriers like this. And besides, Jesus also said that it's not what goes into a person that defiles, it's what comes out of a person. And thus he declared all foods to be clean. But I just wanted to make that clear. So you can eat pork, you can eat ham today. We're not prohibited. So these dietary laws were for ancient Israel. So to separate them from the Gentiles so they could be a holy people to God. Alright, now moving on. Eating the meat of an animal that has died a natural death was prohibited because the animal had not been killed in the proper fashion and the blood drained out. The animal, however, could be eaten by the alien who was within your gates. See the notes in Leviticus 17, but I'm not going to go there. And you could not boil a young goat in its mother's milk. And this prohibition no doubt reflected a common practice in Canaanite religion, which was superstitiously observed, hoping that fertility and productivity would be increased. And probably the certain animals that got prohibited and the ones that didn't, probably the ones that got prohibited were ones that were eaten by Canaanites probably, and maybe used in their idolatrous practices. That's what I'm guessing. As a way to set Israel apart from them. Because, why do you have certain ones banned and not others? So that probably could be a reason, but I don't know. Maybe Prager might shed some light on this. Alright. But that's a basic summary of these laws here. So, but the main thing that makes somebody unclean is their sin. And so, need to be, cleansed from our sin and be a holy people to God by turning away from what actually is unclean, our sin. So, and that's possible through the work of Jesus. Amen. Alright, now we get to the part on tithing. This is an interesting subject, tithing. And there's probably a lot of misconception on what tithing actually is. Because a lot of people think that tithing is when you're giving money to your church, you have to give 10% to your church. And there's some teachers that go a step further and say that you're not going to be blessed by God if you don't tithe. Probably more of like some of the prosperity preachers, probably. And they also use like Malachi 3 that says that if you're not bringing your tithe, then you're robbing God. Like to use that to encourage people to tithe. So, which of course is not what it's talking about. But anyway, but there's a lot of passages that can be used incorrectly when talking about tithing. So, but here's actually what tithing really is. Now, tithe does mean a tenth, and the tithe specified in these verses was only that of the agricultural produce which the land would provide, not giving money to your church. This was a second tithe to be used for the celebration of convocations of worship at the sanctuary. In addition to the first tithe mentioned, known as the Levitical tithe, which went to support the priests and the Levites who served the people. And then Leviticus 27:30 through 33 and Numbers 18:21 through 32. You would have that. And then a third welfare tithe was offered every 3 years. So I'm going to get to that at the very end pretty soon. And also the tithe was to be taken to the central sanctuary where the worshipers were to eat a portion in fellowship with the Lord. So yeah, they ate their tithe. So if it was money, they couldn't eat it. No, it was their agricultural produce that they would bring as a offering to God and also give to the priests, and they would get to eat some of it for themselves. Now, if certain Israelites lived too far from the sanctuary or the tabernacle, for it to be practical for them to carry their agricultural tithe there could be an exchange. Then they could exchange the tithe locally for silver and subsequently convert the money back into the sustenance at the sanctuary. So when they could spend it on the money that they get for exchanging their tithe, they can spend it on oxen or sheep or wine or similar drink or whatever, and then you would eat there before the Lord. But don't forsake the Levite. You need to give him tithe as well to support the Levites, so they can continue their ministry. Yeah, since the Levites, they were the ministers and the priests. They were the ones who were serving God in the tabernacle and in towns scattered all over Israel. Alright, but at the end of every third year, in the year 3 and year 6 of the 7th year, sabbatical cycle, rather than take this tithe to the central sanctuary, it was instead stored up within the individual cities in the land. And the tithe was used to feed the Levites and the orphan and the widow and the stranger, i.e. the foreigner, who lived with the Israelites. So this is going to be in Deuteronomy 26:12, and it's also in Numbers 18:26 through 32. And I think this is actually what the Israelites were guilty of in Malachi 3, that they weren't bringing their tithes to the storehouse for the Levites and such people, and thus they were robbing God by doing so, because God commanded them to be doing this. So I think that's actually what is being referred to in Malachi 3, not by robbing God if you don't give your tithes to the church, or you give 10% of your income to the church. That's not what it's talking about. And the pastors that use that and twist that in order to manipulate you and to guilt trip you into giving tithes are sinning, and they need to repent of doing that. Yeah, they're lying to you about what it says if they're doing that. So, and I'll name one name in particular who I heard this from. Yeah, Robert Morris at Gateway Church in Dallas, Texas. Actually, I think it's Southlake, but that's in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. But he's been guilty of doing this. I've seen some clips of him doing this. So, I don't know I think he's used Malachi 3, maybe, but he has guilt-tripped people into giving tithe, and that you're guilty of stealing, or maybe you're a thief if you're not tithing, or God's going to punish you in some way if you don't tithe. So it's a horrible thing. And it would actually go against 2 Corinthians 9, which says that God loves a cheerful giver. If you're being manipulated and you're being guilt-tripped into tithing, then you're not going to be doing it cheerfully. Yeah, you're not to give out of compulsion, or just because you're told to, which is giving out of compulsion. So, yeah. But be cheerful, give because you want to give, and because you love God and because you love others. That's why you give. It doesn't have to be 10%. It can be less. It can be more. It doesn't matter. So you just give because you love God and you love others. So, not because you're told to. So, I just wanted to make that clear, because I think there is a lot of misconceptions about what tithing actually is. So hopefully that sheds light on the subject, and maybe I'll see what Prager has to say in the next video. So, Lord willing, I'll get to cover that in the Prager video. Alright, God bless you.